An interesting conversation today, I hope for you. I know it certainly will be for me. As you know, this is the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. And so I was thinking as I was putting this show together, what actually would Dr. King say about race relations today? And I thought I would gather some really smart people around this table this morning and ask them from their perspectives. All are very, very active in this community. All are very well respected in this community. You will know every one of them. But having said that, I'd like to introduce you to the Reverend Karen Shepler, who is a community activist of long standing. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Dr. Earl Murray, who is a retired professor from the University of Toledo, very well known candidate for office on several occasions, community activist, known for speaking his mind. And you don't have to guess with Dr. Murray. I've known him for a long time, and that's one of the things that I love about him. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
And Mr. Robert Torres. Everybody knows Mr. Torres. He's been an activist in this town, in the Hispanic community, and in the community in general for quite a number of years. Left us, we missed you, came back. We're glad to have you back. He is now the new executive director of the Northwest Ohio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for being here this morning. I really, really appreciate your taking this time to talk with me. I think that this is not only a provocative subject, the subject of race relations in America and in Toledo. I'd like us to localize this discussion as best we can this morning. I think it's not only provocative, I think it's an imperative one to have. I was one of those people who was pretty sure that after all of the Trayvon Martin discussion and all the angst and the anger around what happened in that case, I was one of the ones who said, geez, I just really hope this energy doesn't go away. This energy should propel us to really pull forward, again, some of these really tough issues. I don't know that happened, but whether it's happened because of Trayvon Martin, it certainly is happening again this weekend because of this anniversary. So what do you think Dr. King would say today about race relations in America?
Go ahead, Karen. You can go first.
I think he'd probably say we've come a long way, but we've got so far to go. And I as I see it, it's a kind of like a bell curve. We came a long way, and now we're going backwards. I think in a lot of ways. There are a lot of people who would say that the Trayvon Martin case isn't about race, and that you're only bringing up the race card to bait people to get involved in the discussion. I would say it's definitely about race if you look at what's been happening with young black males through the last decade, at least, if not longer. I think Martin Luther King Jr. would say, yeah, we've come a long way, and my kids can walk with white kids now, but we've got so far to go.
I think it frustrates me that sometimes we pretend that things are all okay. We pretend, and they're not okay. They're not okay for brown folks. They're not okay for black folks, and in so many cases, they're not that great for white women. So, what do we need to be doing? Robert, go ahead.
Donnie, you look at, you mentioned the Trayvon Martin case, and, from a Latino perspective, we've always seen race relations in this country defined as black and white, and oftentimes dismissing the plight of Latinos in this country, Latinos in this community. So, I believe that the words of Dr. King resonates with all members of our community. And most recently, immigration reform has entered the daily dialogue. And yet you find many Americans and many Toledoans that do not truly understand where economic and social justice applies in that issue alone. So I think that Dr. King would say that we've made some steps forward, but I think that every time that you think we've made an advance, we regress. And we've done that. We've done that in many areas. I think that we've advanced in this community in political issues and being able to elect politicians, elected officials that represent our minority community. But I think when you look at at education, at economic development, at social development, I think we've regressed as a community.
We are so white privileged in Toledo. It's amazing to me.
I'm sorry, Karen?
We're so white privileged in Toledo.
What do you
White
mean by
privilege reigns in Toledo. The fact that we are mostly controlled by white males, mostly, and that has a definite impact on any other ethnic group, especially the minority groups who aren't going to be minorities much longer. And I think that white people live in fear that that's going to happen. I mean, we watch the number of Latinos, you know, in this country rising. We watch the number of blacks in our city and in our country rising. And it's fearful because we've always been the ones to be able to go into a room and know that we're going to be with mostly people who look like us.
That's really interesting. Really, I want to hold that thought because I want to get back to that.
It's funny because I agree with both Bob and Karen to a significant extent, but I think that Dr. King, speaking from a localized level, would be amazed at how Toledo has regressed, significantly regressed since I moved here. I think that when you look at what progress that was made with African Americans and what has happened to African Americans in Toledo, it's shameful. It's absolutely shameful. What does that mean? We can go back to the early 60s when OEO, Office of Economic Opportunity, passed, federal programs mandated by Congress, work our way up through CETA, Concentrated Employment Training Act that came out in 1972, work our way right on through to several others, and arrive at PIC, Private Industry Council, all managed by black people, did well in the community, added virtually every imaginable thing to improve the plight of black people. Toledo is disgusting to the extent of what has happened in this community, notwithstanding the fact that the elected officials have not come forth to do anything to improve the life of that.
Yeah, and you know
And
what?
it's pitiful.
It is, but let me tell you. Let me say this. Malcolm X, in one of his most famous speeches, said, "Black people are chumps." And what he meant by that was that, and I think it applies if he were to say that today. I think that he would include Latinos as well. And what he meant was that we allow folks to take us for granted. We give them what they want. And then at the end of the day, the issues of our community are not addressed. And we allow that to happen. We sell ourselves for very, very little. Very, very little, and almost nothing. And one of, I think, the issues, and I would love to have you back to talk about this particular issue, Robert, at some point. One of, I think, the big issues in race relations between blacks and Hispanics is a perception that Hispanics really don't identify quite so much with the struggle that black people have had, or even the struggle that women have had in civil rights and gaining civil rights, that you benefit from that, but that your preference would be not to be identified as a person of color, but rather more identified with the majority population. So perception, not my opinion, just perception.
Anyone who knows me knows that the opposite is true. You know, being a child of 13, growing up in a migrant family, to poverty. I'm certainly aware of what it is to struggle in. So I don't take, our issues for granted. And you look at issues like education, and where have we regressed in education? We make up the majority of the population in our central city schools. And yet we're having to fight to just get a levy renewed. People
of color make up the majority of the population.
And we have to fight just to get a levy renewal approved, whereas other school districts around us in suburban America are having no problem being able to fund education.
But I would say to you that is in large part because we as a community have not learned how to use the power of our combined voices. What would have happened if the community had stood up and said, we are not going to let these programs go? These programs benefit our community, and everybody knows that when you take away the supports for a community in need, you cause that community to struggle even more.
Not only have they left, but then they're being resurrected back by whites. Whites are governing programs that were once managed by African Americans. They're not totally removed. Where are the politicians and other individuals who should have come out and spoke about what should not have happened to certain programs in this community?
Why doesn't that
Where
happen?
did the money come from? The money came from the whites in the first place, for CETA and all those programs.
The money came from Congress.
Right, which was white.
Which was white. No dispute there.
What's your point, Karen?
But
My point
switch
is, again, it's the white privilege thing. You know, CETA, I had CETA workers. I was an executive director of an agency at that time. I had CETA workers, and actually, I think Teresa Gabriel was over the program, maybe. I can remember her from way back then. And there was no really good organization for that. And I'm not sure that the workers that I had even understood what an opportunity it was for them. It was an
It
opportunity
was
to
a
have a job.
progressive opportunity, Karen.
But-
it was not intended to stabilize one's life forever. It was progressive.
Right.
Governor Rhodes, verifiable, appointed me as chairman for the state of Ohio, for CETA. So I served in that capacity, and I don't want to get into the political arena about that, but the governor did. So I know CETA quite well, all the way from its inception.
But
Go
the
ahead.
money came from a white government.
Yes.
And it was temporary, and it was
Yes.
temporary maybe because for the same reason that that United Way is now saying that funders are tired of putting good money into bad.
What does that mean?
That means that funders are tired of putting money into the central city and watching it being either mishandled or not effectively handled.
Now that's an interesting comment, and I hate to
Oh,
interrupt
oh,
you.
I
but
didn't- I'm not the one who said it.
I chaired United Way, Franklin County. Everything I say is verifiable. I know United Way pretty well too. And when I moved here, without naming individuals that were here, it was amazing to me that if you, in fact, indicated where you wanted your money to go. For example, if I wanted to indicate that my money should go to the Y, United Way had problems with the fact that I would indicate that I wanted the Y to receive my money rather than going into the pool. And if you look at the way the P operates in United Way, PEA, all caps, the way that they allocate their money into the community, it's a wonder that various minority organizations are even able to survive. But you will take the money, whether it's by deduction, through payroll or whatever. United Way needs to be monitored too, the way that they allocate their money based on the programs that they put out.
You know, what I would like, though, and I think your point is well taken, and we need to get to a break, but I would like to talk about, though, the perception that minorities cannot manage these programs. There is a resurgence of social service agencies and services happening in the Old South End
Correct.
right now. But interestingly enough, that community is managing those processes.
It's a perception only, Donnie.
That
not a
community is managing those processes, and I want you to think about this as we go to break. There are white folks out there saying exactly what Karen said. I'm tired. I'm tired of programs. I'm tired of throwing my money into communities where things never change. 73% of all Black babies are born out of wedlock. The number is also high for Hispanics, although it's lower than the 73%. Right. What am I doing here? Think about that. We're going to go to break. I'll see you in just a second.